Welcome into the latest edition of ESPN FC. I'm Dan Thomas, and what a treat today. It's just me and you in the studio, Stevie. Reunited at last. Of course, the big talking point away from what's been going on in the Champions League over the last couple of days is Thomas Tuchel announcing he'll be leaving at the end of the season. It's been an unmitigated disaster, really. Certainly this year, the Bayern team find themselves a long way off by Leverkusen, behind against Lazio, out of the pole call. But the whole story for me is fascinating from a player's perspective as well. So welcome in Nedum Onuoha and Frank Leboeuf. It's interesting, guys. You've got these three managers who are leaving, yeah? Jurgen Klopp's going off into the sunset. Everybody wants to kind of do well for him to say goodbye. Xavi, I don't think anyone particularly hates Xavi. He's just a little bit out of his depth. But you've got Thomas Tuchel, who's ostracised part of his squad, who's openly criticised some of his key players. They now know he's leaving. Nedum, what's the motivation for those players now, between now and the end of the season? For example, against Leipzig, what do they care?
No, you know what, Dan? I think there's a difference between playing for a manager and playing for yourselves. And I think in Bayern's situation, they've got a chance to win another Bundesliga. They've got a chance to do well in the Champions League and potentially win that. And even though you might not necessarily click with a manager, all these things are still there available for you to do well and to sort of achieve something. And yes, you might be delighted to see the back of him. But these games do matter. And if you sort of just peter out between now and the end of the season, it's not just a disappointing year for Bayern Munich, it's a hugely disappointing year for yourself as well. And let's be clear, this job, that when it becomes available, there are going to be lots of people who will be thinking about sort of applying for that job, say the club looking to see who's going to select it. Well, let's see how those players react in this situation now, when things haven't gone as well as they needed to in the first half of the season. This is when you show the character. And this is, probably what we saw last year, for example, when they came back and won the title on the last day. Going ahead of Dortmund in the final seconds of the season, basically. Like, Bayern players cannot quit, even though their manager will be out the door come the summertime.
But, Stevie, if you couldn't get a song out of this squad before they knew you were leaving, why would they up their game now?
I don't understand why they would. I understand that Nedum's talking about the professionalism of the players, and you don't play with Bayern Munich unless you're a good professional, right, at the very least. So, yes, they're going to be putting it in, but to what extent? We always talk about what you see on a Saturday is because of the process during the week, the training, how sharp it is, when you do your running properly. So your preparation is huge. Are you telling me that subconsciously a lot of these players are just not going to be going through the motions? And then, yes, when the game comes, they'll think, OK, it's a game.
Right.
Football doesn't work that way. You have to put the work in, you have to put the preparation in order to, come Saturday, perform. And there's no way that Kimmich and Goretzka in particular are going to be doing anything other than having a wee snigger under their breath, and we're glad to see the back of this guy. But as I said, it will affect the preparation towards the game. The game's the easy bit. Turning up and thinking your attitude's good for the game is completely different than spending a week at training not 100% being there.
How do you handle this if you're Tuchel?
If I'm Tuchel, I'm gone.
You would just say, look...
Listen, it's pointless. What chance... I don't understand. What does he think's going to happen? Because, as you said, he's not getting a tune out of them. He's pretty much taken the heart of Bayern Munich and Goretzka and Kimmich, who are German boys, the whole 9 yards, and ostracised them. So what do you think is going to happen now that the shoe's on the other foot now? Because you're gone, you're leaving.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me that Thomas Tuchel is staying there. He should get his bag and go, because there's no way this changes at all.
Frank, it's such a weird situation, isn't it?
It is a weird situation, and I agree with Stevie on that part, that Tuchel, if he doesn't want to work with the guys, he should leave right now, because it's not a good situation for the club, for the players, for the fans, even for himself, because he's not going to be listened. Now, Stevie was talking about the process of working during the week in order to have a good game on Saturday. But luckily, I would say, for Bayern Munich players, they play every 3 days. So they don't even prepare anything. They just rest and play, rest and play. That's a chance for Tuchel to avoid issues with some players. And on top of that, players like Kimmich or Goretzka, they have a Euro to play. especially at home. So they have to make sure they're going to be good enough to be at that time good enough for their national team. So it's up to the player, the professional players. All the names that we see right now are going to be involved, most of them, for the Euro. So they have to prepare professionally. Therefore, they have to perform professionally. So I don't have any issues with the players giving their best. Now, it's a real question mark for Tuchel. I don't know what he's going to do and how he's going to be listened.
Do you know, you brought up Klopp,
yeah,
right? And we saw a Liverpool team the other night against Luton in the second half going hell for leather. The crowd were behind them. The players just couldn't give enough. Are you really telling me there's any way that's possibly going to happen when Bayern Munich are playing at home? There's no chance. There's going to be dissent in the crowd. Half the crowd will be trying to get behind them. The other half will be complaining, and it'll be the same for the players. There's no way possible that you step on the field at Bayern and the reception and the atmosphere is going to be anything remotely close to what we saw at Anfield the other night.
Explain to me this, Stevie. A manager who's achieved what he has, who's got the experience that he has, how's he got the man management of this squad so wrong, so early?
It is completely perplexing. I mean, page one in man management, you know that unless you're replacing somebody, you've got to keep them on your side. Whether you think they're a good player, bad attitude, whatever it is, until you know you're replacing them, you can't be criticising them in the press and criticising them in front of the team and dropping them and doing all that, and then expect to turn around and ask them to play for you. It's page one. This is a guy that's won the Champions League who's actually done this. It's absolutely perplexing. It's rookie material is what it is.
I think Tuchel got everything wrong at Hello when he came into the dressing room, fighting with the leaders of the dressing room. And he was fighting against Kimmich, Goretzka, even De Ligt felt unwanted. It's where you lose the dressing room. You have to be psychologically ready to maybe get slowly in the way that you want to build your squad. But you don't go into the press, you don't go publicly, of course, and you don't go with the players saying, I don't want you, I don't trust you, you're not good enough. It's not going to work. They're going to destroy your dressing room. You will have to be psychologically more or smarter in order to build your team little by little. But you don't do that. He lost them at the first step that he made into the dressing room.
It's such a head scratcher, isn't it, Nedum, given the experience that he has?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think listening to the way you guys are talking about it does take me back to, say, when certain managers come to new clubs and, you know, they have a belief that they have time. And when they have that belief that they have time, they'll be stronger with some of their opinions, stronger with some of the messaging. But the fact is, time will come due to results. And I think sort of ostracizing some of those key players within that setup and within that culture, I think that's a big mistake that he's probably made there, because now the team isn't performing well. And, you know, to quote some things that I've seen in my career, there's a very, very awkward moment that comes when a player who's been significant for many years all of a sudden isn't sort of seen in the same light anymore. But that player can go up to a manager and sort of like push back and say, well, the chances are I'll be here longer than you will be. At that point, who's really got the power? And I think for Tuchel now, between now and the end of the season, as Stevie was saying, it's one of the weirdest jobs you can probably have in football, where realistically all the people that were down, given so the way you were treating them beforehand, are now going to be up because they know you don't have the power anymore. The club don't want to give you that power anymore. You're not part of the long-term sort of decision-making and thought process for what's ahead. So how can you say this player's not good enough anymore when the fact is, when pre-season starts, he'll be there and you will not?
What's interesting as well is Tuchel's next step. Reports that Barcelona are interested in talking to him. You think,
why?
Given what they've seen over the last 12 months, why is exactly the right word, isn't it?
Well, it may be more to do with who's available. You know, do you go with a guy who not that long ago won the Champions League, and when you look on paper, his CV is fantastic, but then if you dig deeper and you look at the mess he made with particularly experienced players at Bayern, you're walking into a team in Barcelona. Yes, we always talk about the young guys, but they've got a huge amount of seasoned professionals. And so do you really want a guy doing the same thing with them? I think it's more to do with who's available, as opposed to, well, we really want Thomas Tuchel.
But this is difficult to just sum up as an anomaly, isn't it? When you take a look at Thomas Tuchel, despite the success he had before Bayern, this is a big red flag if I'm looking to hire a new coach, Frank.
Yes, it is, and I wonder why Barcelona is even interested about him. I mean, I would be Laporta. I would say, well, okay, how he managed his former team, how it worked with Bayern Munich. Can we find something with him that which can change something in our dressing room? And we could see that some players already, senior players, are fighting with Xavi. So why do you want something different with somebody who did exactly the same at Bayern's Munich dressing room? And therefore, yeah, it's tricky for Thomas Tuchel, because who's going to be interesting about a guy who's ready to fight with the players? It doesn't work anymore like that. Maybe in our time it was possible. It's not anymore. Players need to be cuddled, need to be treated with lots of respect. Maybe it's not possible for Tuchel to work that way.